Thanks for listening to Entre Nido, the show where we interview neat people with neat stories to help you live your Nido life. Our goal is simple. It's to inspire, challenge, and empower you to achieve more in life. Whether you're considering the leap from your 9-to-5, creating side hustles, or becoming the best version of you, you've come to the right place and we're glad you're here. So let's get started. Welcome back to Entre Nido. My name is Neff, host of Entre Nido. Today we talk with Judd Hoekstra. Judd Hoekstra is a leadership and human performance expert, sales executive, and best-selling author and speaker. Crunchtime, Judd's most recent book, co-authored with professional baseball pitching coach Rick Peterson, reveals the secrets of how to perform your best under pressure. It's a great interview on focus, self-limiting beliefs, what you tell yourself, positive self-talk. Judd is a great guy, really brilliant guy. It was an amazing episode. So I'm so excited for everybody to hear it. Other resources we mentioned as well in the show are Carol Dweck's Mindset and also Eat That Frog by Tracy. Good news is that you can get either one of those books for free by going to entrenido.com, clicking the free book tab at the top of the screen, and it's yours to keep, and you get a free 30-day trial with Audible. Even if you decide to cancel, you can keep the book as a gift from Audible and from us here at Entre Nido. So make sure you take notes today. Reach out to Judd, buy everything that he has made, buy his books. Check out Crunchtime. It is honestly one of my favorite books of 2018. So make sure you buy a copy for you and for a friend. Hope you are all doing great. If there's anything we can do for you, any questions, anything you need, if we can serve you in any way, please check us out at entrenido.com, and you can fill out the contact form there or just find us on social media. Thanks so much for listening. Now on to Judd Hoekstra with Hitting the Glove. Well, welcome back to Entre Nido. My guest today is Judd Hoekstra. Judd, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matt. Glad to be here.
It's been quite a journey we've been on through scheduling conflicts and sickness on my part and rescheduling and things like that. So it's probably been a 3-4 month journey, and I'm so glad to have you on today.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And it has been an odyssey to get here, but very happy to be here and thrilled to be speaking with you today.
Thank you, sir. So before we get started and jump into today's topic and backstory, I'd love to let the listeners know where they can find out more about you.
Sure. I can be reached on my website at juddhoekstra.com. That's JUDDHOEKSTRA.com. My email is judd@juddhoekstra.com. And I'm also available through LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook as well. So all the usual networks.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So your book that you co-authored with Rick Peterson, Crunchtime, is amazing. It's really changed my life. So for me, I grew up a little bit playing sports. My parents had me in a lot of different sports. I did a little bit of motocross. I did baseball. I did soccer, different things like that. But I never really found my niche with sports. But I found more my niche like with music, and I play in churches and things like that and travel. But the thought of Crunchtime was so interesting to me because it talked about fear, how to overcome it, how to really invest humor into a high pressure situation, things like that. So I want to talk about the book some today as well and draw some things out of there. But before we get started, I'd just love to hear kind of your backstory, like how you got to be the VP of where you are right now and sales executive and best-selling author and speaker. I'd love to know kind of how you got there.
It's interesting when I look back on it, you could look at it and say, wow, I had this really good plan and I followed it to execution. But as most people in the world know, it doesn't always work out that way. And I'm much happier to know that the Lord had a plan for me and he was looking out for me along the way. So I studied a combination of psychology and business at Cornell University and came out and did some consulting work with what at the time was Anderson Consulting. It's now Accenture in their change management area. And as I was getting ready to start a family, decided I wanted to get off the road. And it was that particular role had me doing a lot of travel. So I ended up changing organizations, and I joined up with the Ken Blanchard companies. As it turned out, Ken was a former Cornell alumnus as well. And I'd actually heard him speak on the topic of leadership multiple times when I was at Cornell and had values that were similar to mine. And it just worked out that I was able to join the organization as a sales consultant and do less travel and be able to start a family here in the Chicago area. And over the course of time, I was able to recognize that one of the areas that Blanchard kind of had a gap in was in the area of change leadership. And so coming with that expertise from Anderson Consulting, I was able to contribute toward a couple different books. One was Who Killed Change, and another was Leading at a Higher Level that Ken was part of writing. And that was just a thrill to have that door open for me and to be able to partner with him on that. And then it's interesting because a call kind of came out of the blue in the spring of 2014 from a gentleman, Rick Peterson. And I'm a big baseball fan. I played baseball through college, and I recognized Rick's name. He was the pitching coach of the Oakland A's during the Moneyball era. And he also was the pitching coach of the New York Mets as well after he left Oakland. And Rick said, hey, I want to write a book with Ken Blanchard. I think a pitching coach is the ultimate 1-minute manager. We have to, go out in the middle of the game and give, instruction or direction and get people back on track, get the pitcher back on track in less than a minute. And then, hopefully their performance does turn around right away. It ended up being fortuitous for me that Ken actually had a couple other book projects going at that particular point in time. So Ken directed Rick and said, hey, why don't you speak with Judd? He knows baseball well. He knows the leadership side of it real well. And so that was actually the start of Rick and my relationship. And it turned out to be a great one where we just hit it off right from the start. And it's interesting. Rick is known as kind of a mental game genius. And he also studied psychology, specifically sports psychology, and employed that in a lot of his coaching. So the combination of leadership and coaching and psychology really was just the intersection of both of our backgrounds and led to what we thought was a pretty interesting topic, because we know, performing under pressure is a universal problem, and it's something that everybody faces at some point in their life, and probably, if not daily, at least weekly or monthly. And as you mentioned, it impacts not just sports, but it impacts music, it impacts entertainment, it impacts your job, it impacts family relationships. So there's no one that's immune to it. And we thought this would be a great problem to solve. I'll just briefly share that one of my driving forces in wanting to write about this topic was that I had actually struggled with performing under pressure in the past at various points in time. And you could say that I had choked. And so as I watched my kids go through hockey tryouts and swimming competitively and so on, it was one of those things I saw them having difficulty with it as well, and said, I don't want to see anyone suffer through the pain of choking. Let's solve this problem. So that's what led me to write about it.
That's awesome. And kind of my exposure and my experience has been with music. So I had the opportunity to play music with a friend of mine. We travel nationally, and there's been times where I've had the opportunity to be in front of like 4,000 or 5,000 people at a time. And I remember in the early days, my friend who's a seasoned veteran in all these things was just like, he was just real casual in a sense. And almost me being more analytical and focused in the sense of like, make sure I have all my music and all my checks and balances and I have everything going, all my ducks in a row. I was almost at first like, man, he's so like relaxed, or he's just so jovial in such an intense time. You think the psychology is to double down and really focus. Like if it's a big deal, you've got to really focus now. And what I found what was happening, which he's already gone through, and I didn't realize what was happening, he would make a joke, which would actually make me really laugh. And I would just feel kind of that fear kind of peel off of me. And I realized, but I want to do a good job, and I want to be a good steward of what's been given to me. And you do want to, that's totally true. But it can actually hijack you. Your intense focus, when you get so focused, you have to learn to relax a little bit, laugh about it, enjoy the moment, and be present, because you will focus so hard on not making a mistake that you actually make more mistakes, and your brain will forget more things.
Yeah, you nailed it, Matt. It's really interesting that what the research shows is that what you need to do is you need to double down on your preparation, but when you're actually leading up to and during the performance itself, we talk about this in the book, that you want to try easy. And try easy is to be able to perform in sort of a 90% effort where you're in a relaxed state. You're just in a way reacting based on the preparation that you've done. So you double down on the preparation, and then you go easy once you're in the performance, and it tends to lead to much better performances. There's a number of examples of U.S. Olympic sprinting trials. There was sprinters that were trying to make the team, and they were running, obviously their hardest, and they were getting worse times than their personal best. And the coach said, I want you to run this next race at 90% and see what happens. And they ran the race at 90%, and they beat their personal best. They made the team. And so that's just one example of many where trying easier does help.
That's so amazing. And I was thinking too, before we jump into kind of the topic of where we're going, this has been amazing so far. And everyone that's listening too, make sure you get a copy of Crunch Time. Seriously, it is like one of my favorite books of 2018. No joke. I read probably 100 business books the last 2.5 years, and this is one of my favorite ones. So make sure you check it out. Make sure you download it, do whatever you have to do. Buy a couple copies, send them to friends. It's a game changer, especially for people that are high performance markets. But I want to ask you, Judd, and I don't know if this has been covered in the book or not, but what are some things that we can do, and what are some things that you've done in your life as far as like self-talk? Is there anything that you do or prime or get yourself ready for before you have to do like a huge speech or step out or do something?
Yeah, one of it is I do actually have kind of a go-to set of Will Ferrell videos that make me laugh like crazy. So that also relieves a lot of the pressure and tension. And
that's amazing.
I think just the act of laughter does amazing things to your body. It puts endorphins through it, takes the cortisol away. So whatever makes you laugh, find it, bookmark it and cue it up. I think the other thing that I'll do is I ask myself a few questions. I think a lot of times our mind naturally floods with fear, worry, and doubt when we're in one of these pressure situations, and you need to reframe that. And I ask myself a few questions. One is, what's my opportunity here? What's the upside of this, as opposed to what am I worried could happen in a negative way? Think about what the positive is that could happen. The other would be, if I was advising my kids in this situation, what would I tell them to do? Because more often than not, we're pretty rational and calm with our kids compared to what we are in our own head.
Oh, that's really good.
So,
wow.
Think about what you tell your kids to do. You're probably your better self when you're speaking to your kids than you are when you're speaking to yourself. Another one that I've heard is one of my colleagues actually said, one of the questions that she asked herself is, what would Winston Churchill do in this situation? She's a big Winston Churchill fan, and
that's great.
She said, if you pick a hero of yours, they'll probably react, well under pressure. And, that you can remember it was what would Jesus do in this scenario? We've had what would Winston Churchill do? Any number of people that would reframe your mind to say, they're probably not going to freak out in this situation. They're probably going to handle it pretty calmly, and I should do the same.
That's so helpful. Yeah, it's like almost the poster child, like get a poster. I want to get a poster now in my office. I'm going to do that. I'm going to pick that one person that just seems cool and collected and calm, and I'm going to hang that up. That would be great. I was reminded about a couple months ago, we had kind of an opportunity to grow. We had some shifting with our jobs and our businesses, things like that, and we were facing about 50% of our income being cut in about 60 days. And the old me would have freaked out way more. I freaked out I would give myself a solid day. Like not verbally, but I was just like in my head, like, oh my God, I've got a wife and kids and a mortgage and all these things. And what are we going to do? How are we going to figure this out? And so one of the best, most amazing compliments my wife has ever given me was back in that season. After about 3 or 4 days, she said, your reaction, how you've reacted and responded to this is completely different than how you used to be and how you would have reacted and responded. And that was so great to me just because I was like, oh, thank God that I'm growing in this. Because for me, I don't, when people look at old pictures or of themselves when they're 18, 19, 20 years old or whatever, they always, like, some people want to go back to that day. And I'm like, I don't want to go back to that. Like, those were good days, but I want to keep moving forward because I know a lot more. I'm more wise now. I'm more seasoned. I'm not as spastic and impulsive and things like that, So I'm thinking, when I look at old pictures, I'm just like, oh man, for example, I bleached my hair blonde when I was 16 and I have brown hair. So when you bleach your hair blonde, you go to Sally's beauty supply in your local town. And when you have brown hair, dark brown hair, it doesn't turn out good. It doesn't turn out blonde. My 2 friends who were blonde, it looked cool, but for me, it looked horrible. It turned out orange, So, just staying in your lane and seeing like, I don't want to go back to that 16-year-old kid with the marble.
Well, what an awesome reaction from your wife. That's high praise. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, it was a big deal because she's, it's the people that live with you that know you. So it carries more weight for sure. Kind of going forward, I would love to talk about kind of today's topic is hitting the glove. And for people that aren't the sports reference, it's essentially just hitting the mark. What's the one thing? What's the thing that you need to focus on? And I love because I think in this life that we have so many choices, so many options, so many things just beckoning for us to put our opinion on or say or do, or things that are vying for our time. I would love to kind of hear more about that, hitting the glove. What's the one thing? What's the thing that we need to focus on that you found in your research?
Yeah, so hitting the glove is a metaphor for what Rick, when he was in spring training with his pitchers, he would often ask them, what are your goals for the season? And many of the pitchers would name things like, I want to win 20 games this year, or I want to pitch, 240 innings, or and they were naming these sort of lofty outcomes as their goals. And he would say, interesting, but not quite. What I want to do for you guys, I want to boil it down to the absolute basics. And I want to have you only focus on goals that are 100% in your control. Because, in the game of baseball, winning 20 games, the pitcher has certainly a strong impact on the game, but there's many other factors that are outside the control of the pitcher. So it could be how the fielders behind him are playing, how many runs they score for him. It could be, the calls of the umpire, any number of things which are outside the control of the pitcher. And so winning the game isn't ultimately in the control of the pitcher. So what Rick wanted to do was to say, I want to remove any distractions or anything that could create anxiety that you don't actually have control over, and have you focus entirely on the one thing you do have control over, which is throwing the ball in the catcher's glove. And if you do that with excellence on a consistent basis, you're going to be successful, and you probably will hit those lofty outcome goals. But let's focus just on getting the ball into the catcher's glove. So that was kind of his lesson in goal setting, is break it down into the most simple form. And that analogy or metaphor can be used in any number of areas. And when I thought about it from a work perspective, before I was promoted to my current vice president role, I was in a sales consulting role with the Ken Blanchard companies, and I was interacting with customers on a daily basis. And in many cases, I found myself getting distracted or by a large quota, or getting distracted by tons and tons of emails coming in, or internal meetings, or other things that were not helping me get toward my goal. And so I thought about, well, what's my version of hitting the glove in business and sales? And I came up with the idea that really for me, hitting the glove, the things that are totally in my control are having good quality interactions with, customers or prospective customers on a daily basis. And so I set that as my version of hitting the glove at work. And what changed is that when I did that, I started reprioritizing my day. So if that's the most important thing I get done in the day, then that's what I should do first. There's a book out there called Eat That Frog that Brian Tracy wrote, which is the old Mark Twain quote about do the hardest thing first in the day, eat the frog first thing in the morning, and the rest of your day will be easy. And so it sort of follows on that logic to say, if I take care of my 2 high quality interactions with customers or prospects first thing in the day, then I'll have time later in the day when my mind isn't maybe quite as sharp to go through email and to do some of the things that are maybe more on the administrative side, which are necessary but not going to necessarily get me to my goal.
So it's basically figuring out that one thing, hitting the glove. What's my goal? What's the part of my job and my career, whatever I may be doing. And once you do that, then it's focusing on the process and then not necessarily the results. Would you say?
Absolutely. So and again, I'm a sports fan, so I listen to a lot of coaches and coach speak, but Bill Belichick is famous for the quote, "Do your job." And it's all about, following the process and doing what is in your control and your responsibility. And if you do that and all players on the team are doing that, you end up with a good outcome. If you're worried about what other people are doing or things that aren't in your control, that's when you don't do your own job very well. And you certainly can't contribute toward a larger team that way either. So yeah, it's definitely a heavy focus on the process and sort of the things that are in control, that you're in control of within that process. And it's funny, but we, as a family, I have a son and a daughter and my wife, and we all kind of, like I said, I had thought through my version of hit the glove for work, but we began to think about it as, what's our version of hit the glove for our family? And, is it, let's make sure that we're having dinner at the dinner table together, or, what is it that is going to help our family out the most that we are in control of? And you can do it for any number of areas of your life.
That's so good. We're almost done here, but I had one more question, then we'll have a final closing thought. But I want to ask you kind of what have you done, or what have you done with failure? Like, let's say, people are listening right now and they're thinking, okay, this is great. This is helpful, but I've had failures in the past, and there's things that I've messed up because under pressure, I was just giving it too much, and I was just too cranked up. I wasn't thinking clearly. I have this now. our listeners are going to buy the book, apply it to their lives. But what do you do like with failure, like a negative self-talk kind of afterwards, maybe when you've blown it? Like what are some things that you've said or actions that you've taken or mindset that you've had after you've had a mistake or a failure? How do you recover from that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Matt. For myself personally, you talked about kind of yourself evolving and developing as a human being, and this is certainly an area that I've been working on myself as well. And I would say that as I've matured there's a number of books that have really helped me kind of adopt a different approach to failure than what I would have instinctively. But my approach is really to think about it as, what did I learn from that situation so that hopefully I can avoid that outcome again in the future. If it was not the outcome that I was shooting for, then what did I learn in the process? What am I going to do differently next time? And really kind of do kind of a post-mortem or in some cases they call it an after-action review in the Army. I know that's the term that they use there for, and you can do an after-action review for good events or events that lead to poor outcomes, but you certainly can learn a lot from the ones that lead to poor outcomes. And there's a gentleman I interviewed as part of the book who's the CEO of WD-40. His name's Gary Ridge, and he's just an incredible person, but he actually, within WD-40, he doesn't allow the word failure or mistakes.
Wow.
Literally has banned them from the language. And he says, we refer to them as learning moments. And what he's trying to do is create a culture where people are not fearful of sharing their learning moments with others, because what he wants is he doesn't want everyone to repeat the mistake on their own. He wants one person to make that mistake and then share what the learning was from it so that no one else has to repeat it. And he went so far as to create this contest where he had people sharing these on a monthly basis. And at the end of the year, the winner who had the greatest learning moment, which in essence was the greatest failure, but the most learned from it, they were sent around the world with their spouse, and they got to visit all the WD-40 offices around the world and share their learning moment. And it was an all expenses paid trip. And
wow.
So he's really built that into their culture. And there's an awesome book called Mindset by Dweck,
yes,
which I would highly recommend. Mindset, the New Psychology of Success. And it really talks about the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And growth mindset people are doing exactly what I'm trying to do and working on, which is to view failure as, a learning process and, an opportunity to grow and get better.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. I think too that we label, the power of labels. There's so much power in a label, good or bad. You have a failure, you mess up, you screw something up, and I've seen people just crucify themselves for 10 years over it, 5 years, 20 years, and it really doesn't do any good. You have to deal with it. And I think too, sometimes people maybe interpret it wrong and they try to kind of water it down and like, oh no, but like, no, you totally failed. You totally blew that, but you can get back up. And I think the power of labels is crucial. So yeah, I love Dweck's book, Mindset. Yeah, check that one out as well. Everybody that's listening, if you haven't yet, highly recommend it. Well, we are almost at that time, but before we go, I just want to get kind of a final thought, closing thought, something that you'd like to share with our listeners.
What I would say, Matt, is when I kind of started my work with Rick in writing the book and doing the research on it, I was definitely the student. I did not know all this stuff before I undertook writing this book. And so it's been a great personal journey for me. But what I've realized is that this idea of, reframing from threat to opportunity that allows us to perform better under pressure, that it's like any other muscle. If you begin to use it regularly, it then becomes stronger and it becomes more instinctual for you. And so I've noticed my own, performance under pressure, my own calmness, my own demeanor has gotten significantly better. And it's really just a result of using this muscle. And it's something that any single person in the world can do. It doesn't require, I'll be the first to witness that it doesn't require massive intelligence to do it. It just requires the ability to hit the pause button when you're in one of these situations where you're not thinking the way you want to. That's another question I would just, that's sort of at the top of my list is when I'm in a pressure situation and I'm feeling this fear, worry, and doubt, I ask myself, do I want to think or feel this way? And if the answer is no, hit the pause button, think about how else you could look at the situation.
Wow, that's really good. Well, this has been amazing, Judd, seriously. Before we go, could you just share out any website, books, anything else you would want to promote?
Sure. Thanks, Matt. I can be reached at Judd@juddhoekstra.com. or the website is juddhoekstra.com, or feel free to reach out to me through LinkedIn as well. I'd love to connect with anybody, and I certainly would appreciate any feedback you have on the book. Feel free to leave a review on Amazon. That's always helpful. So thank you very much, Matt. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and your listeners.
Awesome. Thanks, Judd.
We so appreciate you joining us for this week's episode. As a thank you for listening to the show, head over to entreneater.com to download your free audiobook, thanks to our friends at Audible. While on our website, you can purchase your very own official, super comfortable, super trendy Neato t-shirt. Looking to take your life and business to the next level? Click the Join Our Mastermind at the top of the screen. Have a question or comment for the show? Click Contact to message us. And finally, don't forget to subscribe to our show to stay current with all the amazing interviews from our guests. Now take what you've learned, apply it, and start living your Neato life now.